I'd like to call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners special meeting for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024 to order. Please have a roll call.
11 present, 1 absent.
11 present, 1 absent. Please note that Commissioner Reardon is excused from tonight's agenda. Next, Commissioner Sorge, could you lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Fellow Commissioners, Mr. Chief Executive, Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which will greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Next, we'll call for any public comment on any item on the agenda, and this is just for the special meeting. So if anyone would like to come forward and have any public comment on any item on tonight's agenda. Seeing none, I'm going to call for the special meeting. J.P. Gallagher, Chief Executive, is calling for a special meeting of the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024 at the 7:30 p.m. preceding the Committee of the Whole in the Council Chambers, Room 312. The purpose of the meeting is to authorize Senator Mike Cuff to present the results of the Senate Select Committee on Election Findings and Recommendations. We have one communication number 2024-509. Linda Sager Joyce, Clerk and Recorder, requesting Council Commissioners authorization to have Senator Cuff speak on the responsibilities of the canvassing board and proper and timely reconciliation procedures. Do I have you, Commissioner Shea? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Clerk and Recorder, Linda Sager Joyce, if you could come up, please.
Chief Executive Gallagher, members of the Commission, I'd like to present to you tonight Senator Mike Cuff, who would like to speak to you tonight about the reconciliation process and findings from the Select Senate Committee on Elections. Senator Cuff.
Thank you, Ms. Sager Joyce. Welcome, Mr. Cuff.
Thank you, and thank you for all allowing me to be here today. And if I ramble too much, I told feel free to gavel me down. If I get carried away too much, try to pull me back in. But first, I'd like to, this has been quite a journey for me. And I will tell you that I'm going into my final session in the legislature. Spent 8 years in the House. This is my 6th year in the Senate. Got 1 session and two years to go. This is truly the heaviest weight that I have felt in everything I did in all those years. But what I'd like to do is I do have some Butte roots. My grandfather, John Cuff was his name, was one of the very first city policemen, very, very first in the town of Anaconda. Later, he practiced law here. He was a justice of peace and county attorney up in Lincoln County. Returned here the latter part of his life, died up on Wyoming Street. My dad came down and stayed with him. And I've gone up, did some research, found it. Anyway, so coming in here to talk to Linda, I thought, he walked in those doors. And there were a few other places that I wound up, and I thought, he stood in this same urinal, probably. And I got to tell you, it kind of meant something. I maybe hit a few bars he was in. But anyway, I brought a newspaper. This Montana Senior News. My earlier years, I was a newspaper person. And I'm worried what I'm going to do next, so I've gone back to doing a little writing. This is the current issue. And Michelle, am I saying that right? She has some copies. I didn't find enough to give to everybody. But I did an article, Judy Martz, some of you may remember the name, and Mike Mansfield both have bronze, bigger than life bronzes in the state capitol. They were done by Gareth Curtis, who is one of my constituents up at Fortine, Montana. This was the story of Judy's unveiling of her bronze. I talked about Gareth, who did the Mansfield bronzes and also the March bronze. Great work. So it's kind of an icebreaker. I meant to bring 20 or so of them. I think we got 4 or 5. And I'll leave this one with Linda. And if others want them, they're available down at, I think it's the Belton Senior Center, Council on Aging. So what I'm here about really is the primary ballot count and election results, which I heard about in, I don't know, third week in August. I'm sitting in a Environmental Quality Council meeting in Libby, and near the end of it, and I'm thinking I'm going home, and what am I going to do? And I got a dinger on the phone that the Senate President sent a message creating a special select committee to look at the recount, to observe the recount. And he wanted me to chair it. And I'm thinking, BS. This is not exactly what I want to be doing. And I seriously was going to tell him no. Didn't even really want to be on the committee. By the time it's about an hour and a half drive home, time I got home, I was thinking, well, maybe I should. I went in and talked to my wife. And as soon as I started talking, she said, you have to do it. You have to do it. And I did it. By Saturday afternoon, and we had the committee put together. By Sunday, 12 noon, we actually had a short phone Zoom kind of session. By 2 o'clock Sunday, I was on my way down here. And 8 o'clock, no, actually it was between 7 and 7:30 the next morning. You had a work crew in the Civic Center. I was in there. I was there when Linda and her deputy brought the boxes of ballots in, watched them as she unsealed them, unpacked them. And the others on the committee, Senator McLafferty and Senator Lynch are also on the committee. And I might say Butte-Silver has always had very good, in the years I've been there, among the most effective legislators, and got a lot done. A lot of good stuff. By the other members of the committee, Teresa Manzella, Senator from the Bitterroot, and Senator Shelley Vance from Belgrade area. We met all together, met with Linda. Process was, we weren't there to interrupt or interfere with the proceedings. Their job was to count the ballots. We were simply to observe. If we had questions, if we didn't understand something, I asked Linda, who should we talk to? Who's our point man? She was. And almost immediately, there came up a few questions. Went to Linda, and we were to stand, back behind. And we were doing that, but a couple of questions pretty soon, she let us talk right with the people. The people who were doing, so we fully understood. One member of the group had a video camera, a phone that had a big memory, and actually videoed a good number of the steps. The whole process was as open and transparent as could be. And many of the folks who were there as judges, we mingled. There were different quiet times when we got to mingle a little bit. And we were repeatedly told by the election judges, they were kind of I don't know if it's my words, but basically said they were embarrassed the Butte-Silver Bowl was in this situation. They felt bad. They wanted us to find what the heck happened. And I told you, I felt a heavy weight. And there was a time in there when I thought, somehow somebody in New York, Washington, D.C., or Los Angeles, some computer wizard has figured out how to parachute votes into your counting machine. And how the hell did they do it? And how are we going to figure it out? Anyway, Linda was completely convinced some of the ballots had accidentally been picked up, got around to the in-feed of the machine and run through twice. Now, the ballot machine basically counts one precinct at a time. So there would have been 1 or 2 precincts that had all those extra ballots in it. Less than 10,000 people had voted, had brought absentee ballots or appeared in person. Less than 10,000. But the count that went out the other end was, I'm going to say 1,120, 1,130. And it didn't show up as any big precinct recount. It was scattered out, 33 votes here, 33 votes. This 33 kept showing up. A few had 65. Jumped through to the end. We left, still didn't know really what happened. There was lots of pressure, lots of calls from lots of big people as to what's the deal going on down there. And by our meeting, I guess it was actually the second meeting, that Linda had called me and said, could she make, we had everything frozen, all the equipment, all the results, and that was quite a process to go through. I talked to more damned attorneys and officialdom. And basically, what I was told, it's the responsibility of Butte-Silver Bowl. The counties are responsible for the elections. Attorney General said, well, yeah, he said, I could file, whatever I was asking him for at that time. He said, yes, I can file that, but the courts are going to quash it because I don't have authority to force the counties to do anything. Just as the request for the recount went from Linda to the county attorney's office, and a deputy county attorney, I believe, took the responsibility because I think you were on the ballot, is that right? And he filed the papers, and a judge from, I believe, Bozeman, Belgrade area, a retired judge, came in to take the case. I know I'm telling you stuff you don't know, but this is kind of how I build my son's the liar. I'm just what I am. I'm an old lumberjack. And then the court order was that it be done and that a machine count be done, and the final count that came off the machine was the result of the Butte-Silver Bowl election. It did not go for canvassing or anything else. That was reported straight over to Secretary of State. There was a time factor. We were getting down towards general election time when the ballots had to be printed, et cetera. So, we're there, we go through it, we have our meetings. By the second meeting, she had asked, could she make a copy of the records and send them to the manufacturer of the tabulator machine? That seemed to be the logical place that we were looking. And she did, and in consultation with those folks, with the Clerk and Recorders Association, Secretary of State's office, excuse me, and maybe somebody else, but essentially, whoever it was in the process, and I think the manufacturer who has a contract, ongoing contract, basically, thank you. I was just down, I did have a Guinness and I held it down to 1. I should have brought a little Jameson's, that'll settle my throat real quick. But, okay, the finger pointed a different direction then, and began realizing in the test runs that were made, test ballot runs, Linda had prepared 33 ballots, and she had marked some extra marks, some regular, some places she left blank, because that's what a test run is all about, to see will the machine pick up everything that it's supposed to, reject everything it's supposed to. And now maybe I'm going too detailed, but there has been somebody who had the responsibility of taking the memory stick from the tabulator, and that can't be connected to any other source. So they put it in a memory stick, take it out, put it into what's called the reporting computer. The reporting computer gets it all together, shoots it over to Secretary of State's office. So they ran the test results, and the guy who normally does this memory stick job wasn't there. Linda said, well, that's no big deal. She used to do it herself all the time. So she would just take care of business. And she did. She got that information out of the tabulator over there. And for whatever reason, she forgot to zero it out. It was still in the reporting computer. She didn't remember it because she was telling us we had to have run ballots through twice. It's the only way to get there. Well, you have one precinct, and I don't remember, is it 8.2 or 8.2, I think, had 2 people vote in person, 9 people voted absentee. Well, add it up, it's pretty simple, 11 votes. But it's got 44. Well, how the hell do you get 44 out of 11? Well, a guy in the outfeed end, because in my mind, I'm thinking, how could this happen? The guy's got to be grabbing them and handing them back to the guy putting them in and feeding part of them through a second time. So 11 ballots, man, he had to shove them back, and before he got here, they're out again and had to do it 4 times. That's not very likely. Everybody would know it. Either you got a hell of an organization doing a scam, or it's something else. However, if you already counted 33 votes in a test run for that precinct, and they're held up downstream waiting for the rest of then the 11 come and you got 44. And when you compare the printouts, and there were people who thought we should dig deeper. We should bring in some kind of forensic analyst for the computers that goes in and strip. I don't know how they work it. They're way beyond my technology factor. But most of us felt that, hey, it's easy to see these 33 test results, how many votes for Joe Biden, how many votes for John Tester, how many votes for county attorney were on the test ballots. And if you subtract those off the primary election, guess what you get? The same count as was in the second count, the recount. So that was pretty definite. I came in, and one of the main reasons I came down and talked to Linda, I don't know what it was, I'll say 3-4 weeks ago. Okay, how did it happen? She told, and I said, well, who did it? She said, I did it. I said, well, I understand you're responsible, but who actually grabbed the stick and took it over? She said, I did. I'm the sole person. She didn't try to dance around it at all, and at no point did anybody in there, as we observed the count or as people came to testify, that was as honest as I felt as people could be. So, what are we going to do to fix that? Well, we have a number of things. We're going everything to the laws on how you can call a recount, what the time periods are. There's been arguments over a lot of steps in this. We're going to address that. How are we going to make sure, this was a big charge to me, make sure it never happens again? Well, a guy could be smart aleck and say, okay, well, we just won't hold an election down here. That'd fix it. But that's silly. So my recommendation, and it's not quite final, but it sounded like the rest of the committee liked the idea. Clerk and Recorders Association liked the idea. There's a thing called chain of custody. As the ballots come in, they're counted, they're passed on, and but that does not extend all the way to the reporting computer. So I'm going to do legislation saying that the chain of custody goes all the way to the reporting computer, and there will be a 2-person sign-off. In my mind, I used to manage plywood plants. I did about every job, climbing the ladder. And a foreman gets strung out sometimes. A plant manager gets strung out. A lot of people asking questions, a lot of crises here and there. I suspect that's how it is a little bit with clerk and recorder, election administrator. It might be easy to miss a step. But if we have two people that every time the memory stick moves, two people check it off their list or put their initials, all the way to the point of clearing that information out of it. Anyway, that's my proposal at this point. It may get worked over somewhat before it gets through the legislature. And I will tell you this, the legislature is the last damn place you want to come and solve your local problems. It's way better if you come up and say, hey, here's what we think the steps are. Mike from Eureka, Montana can come down and act like he's the smartest guy around, and he's got the answer. May not be the best answer. We're open to ideas. Now, there's several other points, legislation that may come out of our committee. But one of the big ones is, and that's why I'm here tonight. I don't remember, well, I could read the names here, John Sorich and John Morgan, Jim Fisher, Michelle, Dan Callahan, Hattie Thatcher, Bill Anderson, Josh O'Neill, Eric Mankins, Thomas Walker. Did I miss anybody? John Ryron, I'm sorry. I was looking at the empty seat. Okay, so, do you guys have any responsibility? If you guys were doing chores at home, what would have happened? You know, my old Irish dad, I know damn good and well. I got my hind end warmed with a rake handle, stove poker, stick of firewood, but the worst of all was a lilac switch. And usually I remembered. That's why I'm here tonight. You are part of the election process. The folks that elected you count on you to do your job. You canvass the votes. You make the decision if that's good enough to send forward. And it went forward. And then there was discussions. And eventually then it went to the point, it was agreed that a recount would be, or a petition to the courts for a recount would be done, and it was done. From that point on, it was flawless. Your responsibility prior, I should not have had a call on August 17th or whatever day I got that call. I should not have been involved. This should have been handled much earlier. Your job, if there's anything out of line, regardless of what clerk and recorder might say, she has done her duty when she passes it off to you. Now I looked at the minutes from the canvassing meeting. I assume they're correct. And there was some discussion. And there was some discussion, well, would it be within the area of a reasonable, would it be acceptable? That's one of the things, state law, there's no statute, there's no guidelines that say it has to be within, some people have argued, and these are people that testified to my committee, it should be within 0.5%. It's not in state law, it's not in federal law. It's in one federal recommendation. 0.5%, I'm not sure that any county in the state, I've been told by some folks, the difference of the ballots in and the final output within 0.5%. One of the things that's going to be made clear is that Secretary of State will have numbers that show those two items. Number of votes in, and of course some of those are rejected along the way, and they're subtracted out, versus the actual number of votes tabulated and sent out as the final vote. So, now this is hearsay from this point, but it's hearsay that I believe is true, and I'm not saying you did it or anybody here did it. But I have been told by some clerk, I've had a lot of conversations with clerk and recorders and with county commissioners about this kind of thing. I have had some clerk and recorders tell me that they take the report, even going back to the days when they took, an armful of paper into the commissioners. Most of them have 3 county commissioners and present them. And I've had some say, and they just went through there meticulously. Questioning, drove me crazy. There are other county commission boards took them in and they open it to the front page and they look around and they say, well, we've got another meeting this afternoon. Where do we sign this thing? We trust the we trust the clerk and recorder. She's the expert. We're going to trust her. If she brought it to us, it must be good. We're going to sign it and let it go. That's not the way it's supposed to be. You folks have a very awesome responsibility in this process. Now, I'm making this point. This is, I think, the biggest commission in the state. And I think you all are part of that canvassing part. If I'm wrong, I apologize to anybody that wasn't. But how many counties are there in Montana? Who said that? 56. 56. I'm talking to the canvassing board of one of 56 counties. Do you think all of those other 55 counties are perfect? Do you think that some of them may have pushed it along and somehow either it was happened to be right or close or closer? I want this message to go out to every county commission in Montana. I asked MACO in I believe it was our first meeting, the MACO representatives were present, and I asked them to make sure there was training, to make sure that all county commissions understood their responsibility in the election process. I'm here to make sure this is, I don't know what you want to call it, this is where the hammer hits the nail, because it's the one that hit the spotlight. There probably were other other elections that may have been closer than this. I don't know. It's hard to find the records. One of the things that will happen is that the Secretary of State's office will be keeping these 2 numbers, particularly where it's easy to look at them. I would suggest that every county commission, the first thing they should do when you begin to canvass the votes is say, how much difference is there? You had something like less than 10,000 folks who voted. But if there's upwards of 1,100 votes, I got to say, wait a minute, especially when you had several items on the ballot that were could have been affected. And want to compliment Linda on those 33 test ballots. I don't know how closely, if you have looked them over. I think it'd be well worth your while if you did. But what do you think I thought when I was driving down here? What do you think I'm going to find when we get to the bottom of this? Well, this is a Democrat county, right? Typically, you vote a little heavier towards Democrats than you do Republicans. And that's not anything wrong with that. That's just the way it is. If there were extra votes for, let's just say, President Biden or one of the other big races, I thought, okay, maybe that's what I'm going to see. Turns out it was not. When she put those 33 ballots together, she sprinkled the yes votes, among the candidates, Republican, Democrat, Green Party, and Libertarian. Pretty much sprinkled them equally. There was very little final change if you look at the percentages candidate by candidate. There were 2, yours was one of them, that moved, it swapped positions, but it was a close race from the beginning. And if you look at, it's easy to see, am I getting a little long? I'm almost done. It's easy to see that it wasn't heavily weighted one way or the other. And a couple of votes out of 33 doesn't seem like much, but if you multiply that times 28 precincts plus 3 precincts times 65, then it adds up to a somewhat larger number. So that's, and it was close enough. You can see how and why that happened. I did not feel there was anything to indicate she did anything trying to influence anything. I had no reason to believe anything other than what has been presented. This afternoon, I've been in Helena yesterday and today, and I'll be back up. I've got a State Administration Veterans Affairs meeting at 8:30 in the morning. So I'm not going to take long after I leave here. But what was I going to say, Linda? I was going to wrap this thing up here. Forgot my punchline. But I think I have told people that the most accurate general election out of 56 counties, I would bet money that nobody's going to be any more accurate than the vote out of this county. I was so impressed, and so was the other members of the committee, as we watched the recount. It's a good crew. You've got a good clerk and recorder. I believe you folks, you ran for office because you wanted to do good things. And I'm going to say maybe you slipped on a banana peel. Maybe something happened. We all must make mistakes, and I certainly make my share. So I appreciate you listening to me. If you have questions of me, feel free. Linda will give you my telephone number, my cell phone number. I believe Michelle has it. And, I call them odd times. All the people in state government, if they give me their cell phone, they know I'm likely to call. A few don't let me have it. But feel free to call me anytime. We're going to meet November 25th. We're going to come in general, we've discussed bills. We're going to begin pushing them together for committee bills. There may be some folks who bring bills, you don't have to be on the committee, but the bills from the committee carry a little more, well, they may carry a little more positioning. Maybe not, maybe a lot of people don't agree with us, but I think they will. So we're going to start November 20, did I say that right? 15th, November 15th. And then again on 10 days later, I think it's November 25th. And then the bills will become pretty much finalized committee bills because we have deadlines to have them done. I think January 6th is our actual first official day of the next session. We're going to come in and go to work on January 2nd. We're going to do a lot of training and positioning and the preparatory work that we can. Just the way the calendar falls, we actually begin the session January 6th, but we're going to have a running start. I hope to have these bills, at least some of them, right up at the forefront. So with that, thank you all. Thanks for putting up with me. Please take what I said to heart. And I'm not trying to slap anybody and hurt anybody's feelings. But when we step into these elected positions, we accept an awesome responsibility. And I don't think, I've carried quite a few election integrity bills, 2 of which happen to be on their way to the U.S. Supreme Court right now. I consider it a huge responsibility to chair this committee looking into this thing. At the same time, I'm very proud that I was able to do this. This is kind of one of those ultimate service kinds of things, I think, for me. Maybe it's an over-exaggeration, but I think when you do a canvassing of an election, you're doing the same kind of responsibility. And you should be burdened, and you should be challenged, and you should feel like you should challenge the clerk and recorder at different points in it. And when it's all done, you should say, hey, I'm proud of the work we did. And I'm not quite far enough to get to that stage, but I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling much, much better. I feel really good about the people in Butte-Silver Bowl. I'm sorry that had to go through this. It's going to make us all stronger. without a question. And as I said, Butte-Silver is probably going to have the best election, the most accurate, most dependable, or just as dependable as any other county in the state. Thank you all. Questions if you wish. If you had enough of me, kick me. Well, I won't.
Thank you, Senator Cuff. Do commissioners have any comments? Commissioner Shea.
First of all, thank you, Senator Cuff, for being here, and thank you for being at the recount when that was carried out. I participated in that. I felt like I had a responsibility as a member of the council, as the chair of the council, to be part of it, part of the solution, trying to problem solve and figure out what was happening. I think all of us, no matter what we do, we're always in a state of performance improvement, right? We're always looking for ways we can be better, areas where we have weaknesses, and I think this was a very unfortunate way to discover a weakness. I want to personally apologize to the clerk and recorder that we missed it. And I want to apologize to you and your committee. And we vow to do better and take a more granular look. Again, we've always had a lot of trust. What you said really resonated. We do trust our clerk and recorder. We've trusted all of our clerk and recorders, and there's never been an issue. We were very fortunate that this was a fairly simple human error that can be corrected by checks and balances, with us being part of the checks and balances as well, a recount also being part of the checks and balances. So we do appreciate all of those layers of security. I want people to understand that our elections are secure. And I know that you know that as well, and the clerk and recorder knows that. This was really an unfortunate situation with all of the rhetoric that's going around about elections. Elections are secure. Elections are secure everywhere. There are good people like us, like Mr. Cuff, like our clerk and recorder, Linda Sager, like all of you in the audience. Our elections are secure, and we have to work together to hold each other accountable and do the right thing and admit when we're wrong. And so I appreciate the lilac switch that you gave us. My understanding is that MACO is going to be coming up with some trainings for the county commissions to help us better understand what to look for and how to address any inconsistencies that come about. And I do appreciate that you're putting some thought, and your committee's putting some thought into the legislation, because you've been immersed in this for days, weeks, months. So I really appreciate that. I love the extra chain of command idea. If there's anything I can do to help facilitate, I will be attending the meeting on November 15th. You and I spoke about that before the meeting tonight. And I think that's all I have to say. I want to thank you for being here and appreciate your time, appreciate the efforts that the clerk and recorder put into this as well, and the county attorney, all the election judges, obviously. I have signed up to be an election judge this cycle. I will be observing all of the operations behind behind the curtain, as it were, so I can get myself more refamiliarized with the processes, so I know better what to look for as well. So thank you, Mr. Cuff.
Thank you, Commissioner Shea.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Cuff.
Yes, I almost forgot. I think maybe one of the most important is that I would like to issue an invitation and a request. Love to have all of you appear at our next committee meeting. Oops. in the legislature, they all holler, I got to bring donuts to the next meeting. Next time I come here, maybe I will. But invite all you, an official request that at least one of you, the chairman, maybe chief executive officer, but at least I would like to have the chairman or somebody, if it's only one person that you perhaps pass some ultimate responsibility to come and address the committee. And also that you guys put your thoughts together and say, what kind of questions would you like to have answered? If you were going to do training, if all of you guys were going to step off your seats, new guys were step on, what would you want them to know about how to do your part of the election canvassing process. What do you understand about it? What don't you understand? So I'm inviting input from you folks, but I'm making, what's the beginning, I have subpoena power. Don't like to use it, don't like to threaten it. But anytime you do that, you have to start with an official request. And I think you'll be getting probably a follow-up letter, or Linda will. And I have one other. My degree is in journalism. I did that work a lot of years. I followed elections. I spent a lot of all nights counting ballots and reporting them. Now, you need, or your bosses need a little whack of the willow switch, or the lilac switch, or whatever you want. I don't think the press did its job. I don't think the press did its job. And I'm asking right now, how am I going to get my voice out of the expectations of every county commission in the other 55 counties? It's by you guys and your boss saying we're going to put the word out over the airways and through the various social media that you feed onto. So I hope you get this message. Clerk and Recorder has an awesome responsibility, but so does everybody else that's part of the process. So please do that. And ask me questions if you want to. And I'll throw a couple extra cards so you guys can have them. Okay, thank you much. And were there other questions from you?
Is there any other questions of commissioners? Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Thank you, Senator, for coming here tonight. I do have a couple of questions. One, full disclosure, I wasn't on the council at the time of the last canvassing of the ballots, but I'm curious from Linda Sager if the same process was followed as we've done in previous sessions that I've been on council, where we counted the signatures to make sure that that process counted the votes. Was that same process followed through on this last one? And if so, what failed on it? I mean, I hate to go through what failed on it, but obviously we're getting the finger pointed at us. So I'm curious to see how we improve going forward if the same process that was followed as my 12-year tenure previous on the council was done.
Well, if that's a question to me,
Yeah, I think that's.
I think that's a question you might want to discuss among yourselves.
Yeah, I think that we could. It was directed at Clerk and Recorder Linda Sager Joyce, and so if Clerk and Recorder Sager Joyce would just like to come up and just if she could respond to the question from Commissioner Morgan.
Before I sit down, I'll say that my understanding is there was discussion of some irregularities. Should the commissioner stood here and jumped up and down and carried a willow switch with her, or, you know, something else, perhaps. But the numbers, I believe, were presented to you folks, that you had the same thing to look at. That so from there, enough of me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Cuff.
And I'll be around a little while.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody can give me a high sign if. Otherwise, I may head up the highway.
Senator Cuff, I have a feeling we're going to have a pretty extensive meeting following this, so I think you may be waiting for a while to talk to commissioners if so. And I know you have an 8:30 meeting in Helena, so but we have your number. We can make that call.
Yeah, and I'm not going to. It took longer than I thought it would. I'm not going to apologize for it. And the reason I'm not going to apologize is that I think it is a very, very worthy subject that probably wouldn't hurt if it had even more discussion than this. So thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Senator Cuff. Yeah, Clerk and Recorder Sager Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Morgan, we used pretty much the same procedures and the same materials as we have in the past. Since I came to office, we have done more scrutiny. We've done better reconciliation of the ballots through the process. We have better documentation of the numbers. It just got missed. We looked at the test deck more than once before we got to this point. Because it got ran through twice, I just did not see it. Because I knew what the numbers were for the test deck, and we just could not see it, that difference. We saw it in some precincts, but not in others. So that's what the problem was. Several of us looked at it. We went through audits. We went through several of the audit logs looking for it, and we just couldn't see it this time. So the processes have evolved a little bit, and they're evolving even faster for the general, so that we can have those points where we're actually stopping and saying, wait, let's make sure these numbers are balancing before we move on. And you're going to see a longer night before you see results. You'll see slower results while we balance out those numbers to make sure that the numbers are solid.
Thank you, Linda, for that response. Commissioner Morgan, do you have another question, are we?
Just one quick follow-up. So on that, for future reference, so the commissioners would have seen a difference in numbers of what was cast versus what was counted. I guess what would have been the silver bullet that this body would have noticed the aha moment of extra ballots? Because before it was counting signatures, which I don't know if that would have counted or pinpointed this exact issue. I'm just curious for future reference to make sure that we're doing our job due diligently, which I've always felt that we have, based on what we were given. I'm curious to see how we improve, because I don't know how we would have caught this in the last method either.
Commissioner Morgan, Clerk and Recorder Sager Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioner Morgan, I believe in the past what the signatures you were counting were strictly from the poll book.
Right.
So you only looked at election day results. In previous administrations, I'm not sure we were able to present results from the absentee because the numbers were nebulous. As counties poll other voters from other counties, the numbers start to get very mushy and gray, and the numbers never really add up. So specifically in this county, they were not presented during canvass. I did present numbers of what we were seeing as ballots issued at the poll, ballots issued absentee, what the returns were, what was issued, what was returned, and what was counted. So you could see some of that bleeding through on them not being precise if you added up absentee, poll, and looked at the results that were given out as what we were saying were ballots cast. You could see that they weren't really strong as far as balancing out. There is better reporting now from since the primary, our new election database. The numbers are getting stronger and better, and problems that we were seeing in the reporting have been fixed. And even now, when we are doing our daily balancing of absentees coming in from the general, every day we balance those numbers, and we can see that the reports are starting to match much better what we hand count versus what the reporting says. So you will see better numbers presented to you at canvass. And we'll go through that whole exercise of this is what we saw at the polls, these were the signatures counted, these were the ballots that we were issued, these were the ballots received in absentee, this is what was tallied, this is the report, and we'll point out those differences. So you'll see less nebulous numbers going. We're not sure what happened here because as those counties pull voters. We actually have rules in place at the state level now about when the counties can start pulling voters from other counties outside of the election. And that's always been the problem in the past with reporting. Counties would start moving voters while other counties were still trying to balance out their election. That's why the numbers never added up.
Thank you, Clerk and Recorder Sage Joyce. Any other questions of commissioners? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Senator Cuffs, thank you, Linda, for the report. And so with that, I think we're complete.
A suggestion that I had, when I ran the mill, I used to manage a plywood plant and lumber mills. We had what we called KPIs, key point indicators. And at the end of each month and each quarter and 12-month period, you know, if you had your key point indicators properly all along the way, and it's just like a checkpoint, your safety performance, your production, your quality, absenteeism, all those things, whatever you think, and you work with her, what are the key point indicators that you understand? And I'm going to say start with votes in and votes out. Thank you all for your attention. I'm going to move to the back of the room. I'm going to hang around a little while. If somebody, you need me, holler. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cuff. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing. I would take a motion to adjourn. Oh, yeah, we got to put, my fault, yeah. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I would make a motion to place communication number 2024-509 on file.
We have a motion and a second place on communication number 2024-509 on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Motion passes. Now I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, signal by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
We're starting another meeting, just so everybody knows. Would everybody please check in? I will call the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. We've already had roll call, but would you please do it again for the record?
1 presiding, 10 present, 1 absent.
For the record, please show that Commissioner Reardon is excused. We will forego the prayer and the pledge because we have already done that as well. And at this time, I would move on to any public comment on any items on tonight's agenda. If you'd like to comment, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Thanks, Chairman Shea. Council Commissioners, my name is Dan Olsman, 1066 Standby Creek Road. I'm commenting on the fire advisory issue that's before us tonight, before you tonight. As a former Silver Bowl Commissioner and former chairperson of the Fire Advisory Committee, I'd like to comment on the current issues before the Council regarding the status of the Fire Advisory Committee. When appointed to serve on the Fire Advisory Committee and being elected as a chairperson in 2018, the FAC was also in turmoil and not being effective. Through the work and cooperation of the fire advisory members, we got it back on track, restored it, and the fire advisory was able to function effectively to advise the fire director on issues facing it as a committee. The FAC, I'll call it, worked effectively with the Director of Fire Services, Jeff Miller, the paid members of the Butte-Silver Fire Department, and the Butte-Silver Volunteer Fire Departments at that time. Since leaving my commissioner and chair positions, I've followed the meetings of the group through its 8 agendas and meetings, and speaking with commissioners and fire advisory and on the fire advisory and the representatives of volunteer fire departments. The cooperation of the members and effectiveness of the FAC has declined substantially since the former director of fire services, Jeff Miller, retired. It's important to note that the director of fire services is not a member or official participant in the fire advisory committee, but is the official liaison to the paid, between fire advisory and the paid department, professional department of the county. The commissioner members were appointed by the Council of Commissioners and serve essentially as Fire Advisory's executive board, since they are the only members that are allowed to become chair and vice chair of the Fire Advisory Committee. The employees also represent the citizens of Butte on the Fire Advisory Committee as the only elected officials on the Fire Advisory Committee. The Fire Advisory bylaws purpose states, it shall be to study and recommend to the Director of Fire Services ways and means of improving fire prevention, fire protection, suppression, training, and related activities. That's what Fire Advisory is about, is to advise the Director. If there's a disagreement within the FAC that members aren't willing to work professionally with each other, with other members, and can't negotiate a compromise within the charter and the bylaws, then those uncooperative members should step down or be replaced by the chief executive. If the chair of the Fire Advisory Committee is unable or unwilling to restore order to the committee, it's up to the board to elect a new chair. It's up to the chair to schedule those meetings and make sure that they're scheduled and happen. And if the board members don't show up, it might be time to recommend that those members that aren't going to participate be replaced with those who do. The composition of the board is to coordinate the services provided by both the professional department and the volunteer fire departments. The positioning of the volunteer fire department stations are dispersed throughout the county, where they're better able to respond to fires in the outlying rural and suburban areas, whereas the professional stations are more centrally located within the urban area of Butte-Silver, the Uptown Station, and the one on Marsh and Harrison. Consider that it's critical that suburban rural areas are represented on this committee, and historically the 2 rural commissioner districts, 5 and 12, are members of the committee. Consider that 80% of the public safety calls to 911 and responded to by the fire departments are for medical emergencies. So 20% of them are actual fires. The volunteer fire departments only participate in the fire calls, not in the medical emergency calls. The cost to the community for supporting volunteer departments is primarily for the building and equipment costs and no labor costs. In fact, due to the restricted budgets for volunteer fire departments that I've seen, many have resorted to their own fundraisers to independently support the services they provide to the community. It is well understood that the paid department would prefer to run the Butte Fire Services themselves and not have to deal with the volunteer departments. But honestly, Butte-Silver doesn't need to increase their taxes to support this vision when the volunteer fire departments are fully capable of providing protection, suppression, and training in coordination with the paid department if Butte-Silver follows its charter, and both the paid and volunteer departments work as community partners to provide these services. I believe that the volunteers are ready and willing and able to continue to fill this need if the paid department follows the Butte-Silver Bow Charter and cooperates with them. Thanks, Dan Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Is there any other public comment on any items on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the report of the chair. I'll keep it very brief because I do anticipate a long meeting tonight. I just would like to remind everybody that Election Day is around the corner, that you can still register to vote in person at the Clerk and Recorder's office. If you've not registered to vote, please go do that and make sure that you do vote. And if you are registered to vote, thank you. If you're an absentee voter, make sure you get your ballots in the mail as soon as possible or drop them off in person at the Clerk and Recorder's office. Moving on to section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and or presentations. Communication number 1, 2024-484, James Olette, Butte-Silver Bow ADA Coordinator, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a public hearing on October 23rd, 2024 for ordinance number 2024-06 regarding the ADA ramp encroachment permit for the purpose of receiving public comments regarding proposed amendments to the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Code. Do you approve of publication? Thank you. Mr. Olette, staff report, please.
Give me a moment. Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner and Commissioner Shea and Commissioners. All right. So we're going to talk about an ADA encroachment permit and try to follow along with two things right now. Hey. So my name is James Olette. I'm the Butte-Silver Bow Safety Health Coordinator and the ADA Coordinator. So I'm a certified associate in risk management, and I'm a certified ADA Coordinator through the University of Missouri School of Architectural Studies. Before we begin, I want to do just a brief acknowledgement. So the ADA regulations is a civil rights law that exists to protect people with disabilities and ensure their rights to access and participate fully in society. Historically, and sometimes currently, state, federal, and local governments have not always provided the level of accessibility that people with disabilities deserve. As we discuss and debate these policies, it is important to remember that we are talking about the rights of individuals and not just regulations. We recognize that hearing discussions about accessibility can be difficult and frustrating as they affect your ability to navigate and participate in the community. We acknowledge that this can be challenging, but we want to reassure you that even though we may need to discuss the practical ways of accomplishing this shared goal, your place in this community and your sense of belonging are non-negotiable. People with disabilities are an integral part of Butte-Silver Bow, and we recognize the significant contributions they have made and continue to make, this ordinance being one of them, to our community. This is about more than accessibility. It's about ensuring dignity, fostering a sense of belonging, and providing everyone the opportunity to participate fully in a community where each person has a valued role. This process may not always be easy, but it's essential, and we are committed to making meaningful progress. I'm grateful to this community, to Butte-Silver Bow, for the courage to engage in these hard conversations. We recognize the good work that we're doing, along with the community, to improve accessibility and compliance, while still understanding there are challenges that lie ahead. As your ADA coordinator, I will continue to authentically show up, listen, learn, and grow, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to do that here tonight. So, let's talk a little bit about how this policy was developed. So I would first like to thank Chief Executive Gallagher, the County Attorney's Office, County Attorney Sean Peterson, and County Deputy Attorney Sean Peterson, and County Attorney Kelly Fyvie, the Planning Department, Karen Burns, with the Community Development Department, Public Works, Zane Gleason, Mark Neary, and the Council of Commissioners, Commissioner Shea and Commissioner Reardon, especially. A big thank you also goes out to the community. This policy, this new ordinance, really came and was driven from the community. So I would like to thank Ability Montana, everyone with them. The ADA Advisory Committee, we have a very strong and vocal and great ADA Advisory Committee, and I very much appreciate them, even though I'm sure I frustrate them sometimes, but I appreciate their push back on us. Our ADA community forums, local businesses, Top Deck, Medical Aesthetics, we're incredibly grateful for you all. And then technical assistance. So about this ordinance. So the ADA is a federal civil rights law. The U.S. Constitution establishes federal law as the supreme law, and so we cannot make anything at all that is less restrictive, add more restrictive, or add clarity, and that's what this ordinance will do. It'll add clarity to this provision that is provided in the ADA that does have some gray area upon encroachments in the public right-of-way. So who do we look for ADA compliance? Well, the ADA itself. There's the original document that was drafted in 1990, and then in 2010, there's additional standards. Building codes have adopted a lot of the ADA, though not always meeting full compliance, and it says that in the disclaimer in the Montana Building Code. It says you may meet building code, but you may not meet ADA. And then local laws and ordinance. So by this process too, we can make ADA regulations, or at least clarify them. So risk management approach to public policy. So first, it was a compliance-based risk management approach to public policy, focusing on aligning policies with state, federal, and local laws. So that's why I also work with OSHA and the Montana Department of Labor. Very similar with the ADA, you have standards, you have letters of interpretation, and you have new findings that come out. So making sure that we're in compliance with that. We might have to identify potential legal and regulatory risks on both sides. So with our internal policies, the primary goal here is to minimize risks associated with non-compliance, such as legal penalties, financial liabilities, and the loss of public trust. Public trust is incredibly important, especially when you dealt with historically and currently marginalized individuals like people with disabilities who already may have a distrust based on a system that has let them down before. So we have to make sure we remain in good compliance with public trust. And then it also includes just monitoring, right? So part of this policy was not just to develop this ordinance, it was to also come up with a way that we can monitor and ensure its compliance. Title II and Title III of the ADA. Title II is government. Title II is Butte-Silver, state government, transit agencies. Title III is public places of accommodation. Now there is some overlap. The reason why this situation was a little bit more difficult, when it first came to me, I just thought it's a ramp, everyone gets a ramp, right? But sometimes it does have a little bit of complexity on where does Title III start and stop, and where does Title II stop and start, and making sure that we're staying within our lane as a Title II organization. And that was some of the conversations that we had early on. So I started in July 2020 or June 2023. In July 2023, 1 month later, I got grievance BSB 2023-2. So a local business submitted a grievance against Butte-Silver, claiming that the denial of a request for a reasonable modification, which is in Title II of the ADA, that's where that language comes from, into the public right-of-way was a violation under their rights of the ADA. The first thing we noticed was there was a lack of policy at that time. There was no established policy ordinance. There was a practice of how we were handling this. And that created a lot of uncertainty. It created uncertainty on how we were going to communicate about this issue. So we had lots of meetings around it, and we got a lot of feedback from it. Just data collection. So part of this, right, policy development was me collecting data. And so I wanted to hear from Butte-Silver staff, from practices that we have done, from local governments around the state, from people in our community, people with disabilities, advocacy groups like Ability Montana, and I wanted to collect as much data as possible. Now, we both had people who were opposing this and were for it, both from public risk, and it keep coming back to that of increasing public risk by creating a structure in the public right of way, creating a structure that could impede or create a hazard. So without a proper policy, how do we go about doing that? So we came up with a solution to draft a policy. I think that was all good. And when I say policy, I mean public policy within ordinance, not policy as in okay, cool. And then a risk assessment. I'm grabbing the wrong remote. Did I lose a remote? Oh, it's two-sided. Cool. Tricky. Okay. So here's the summary of that data, and what I did was I took the main questions that we were given, and I wanted to show you the questions and the concerns that were posed to me and our solution within this policy to deal with it, so within this ordinance. So why did Butte-Silver Boat deny my request for a ramp in the public right-of-way? Isn't that a violation of my rights? Well, we did realize that is, right? So that if we can provide, the ADA says that we can provide a reasonable modification that could be an encroachment. That makes it very difficult. That kind of language does not give us a cut and dry from a regulatory standpoint. But we can try to create our own ordinance to make that clarity. And it's been very clear with this community that they want that in the law. They want that as a part of it. And I fully support that, as well as our county attorney's office and chief executive fully support establishing that ordinance. And that's why I was commissioned to do so. So this ordinance addresses just that. Even though the ADA doesn't strictly say that we have to provide public right-of-way for an encroachment, this ordinance grants Butte-Silver Bow that as a stricter regulation in line with our role as a local government. We can find that in 1221-0110. So one of the negative comments, why do tax dollars in the public sidewalks fix a private business problem? What if they just plan poorly? Why is the city county giving away public space to help them? This is a very interesting topic, especially in areas like Uptown Butte, where sidewalk space can sometimes be limited. To address this, we made sure that public space is only used when there's no other way for the business to comply due to genuine physical limitations on their property. It ensures that the city county isn't just giving away public land, but instead is allowing encroachments only when absolutely necessary with strict standards in place. So we do have that as adapted in our guidebook. They're basic standards, historic preservation, technical infeasibility, and I can talk more about that here in a bit. Another one, a person who gave me this complaint was blind, and they weren't able to make it to the meeting tonight, so I made sure to address it. They said the sidewalks, or I'm paraphrasing from this conversation that I had, the sidewalks are already steep and narrow. Adding a ramp in the middle is just going to make it harder to get around. How is that supposed to help with accessibility? So now we're shortening the side of our sidewalk, right, by creating a structure in the public right-of-way. Well, this ordinance and permit authority 1221-040 says ensures that ramps do not reduce sidewalk width below the required minimum, preserving accessibility standards and allowing adequate spaces for wheelchair users and other pedestrians. For example, the minimum sidewalk width is 36 inches, 3 feet, but wider width are always preferable. So making sure that if it is wanting to encroach on a sidewalk that is only 3 feet and that goes against our compliance, we would have to find an alternate solution to accessibility. How are we going to make sure that it's actually an ADA compliant ramp? 1221-050 in grant of permission regulation, it says by enforcing compliance. So the compliance that you guys see in the guide is taken right from the 2010 standards. They're very strict from everything from railings to grades to cross slopes to length to landings. It pretty much walks them all through it. We also have staff here in our planning department that we always encourage a pre-planning meeting. We would definitely love to help walk them through the drawings to make sure that it is a compliant. What if some, oh, I'm just talking away. All right. What if someone gets hurt? Grant, thank you, Chief Executive, sorry. Okay, what if someone gets hurt? So grant of permission, and in the ADA encroachment guide, this requirement ensures that the permit holder bears responsibility for any injuries. Butte-Silver is listed as an additional insured, and we are protected. The people of Butte-Silver are protected from liability at that point. Who's going to maintain it? Well, we're going to treat it just like our sidewalks, and this is why we have it under Public Works. I know some questions people ask why we had this ordinance under Public Works. Well, we're going to treat it just like a sidewalk. Can't have snow on it, ice on it. It has to be well maintained and in good order. So in 2021 080, it says maintenance and enforcement outlines that the permit holder is responsible for any activities and expense necessary to maintain the structure in good condition and repair. So it clearly shows here that we must, and that's include making sure that it doesn't have any hazards on it. What about existing non-permit ramps pose compliance and liability issues? Ooh, okay, so this was one question that was we talked about and was very confusing. I was only in my 6 months when I started this investigation. I started in my 2nd month, and we kept finding these magical ramps in Butte, and no one had any reference. There was no permits, and I know Ms. Decker did a lot of research and tried to find these. We did not know where these ramps came from. And so the DOT, there's conversations with the DOT, and they had no idea either. So they're asking us, they have asked us multiple times to produce a policy that we have that makes sure that we can hold these people who have current ramps, making sure that they are accessible before that there can be any enforcement. So not only this is existing for non-permitted ramps on our routes, but also state routes that Montana Department of Transportation can also help with that ramp becoming in compliance, right? So that's what this final section of the policy does. Ensuring a sound policy, so that's kind of a little bit, I wanted to give you a little walkthrough of it. Conducted a risk assessment, identified potential concerns. I channeled those concerns into data questions. Those questions were answered in the ordinance. It was reviewed by the County Attorney's Office and by the Chief Executive, Planning Department, Ability Montana, our ADA Advisory Committee Group, Historic Preservation Group, Planning and Community Enrichment. And so now I present it before the Commission to have their final thoughts on it. Lastly, I'd like to say, this is about a collaboration effort. This photo here, it just means a lot because sometimes this process wasn't always easy, but it was incredibly worth it. And it was just really cool to be able to be a part of something and to see how when people in the public drive things and when Butte-Silver employees listen and show up, we can really come together and do some really amazing things. And I'm completely honored, and this is one of the highlights of my career, being able to present this before you tonight, because it is the best of local government working together. And so again, thank you for everyone who came and everyone who pushed this, and extremely thankful to Chief Executive Gallagher, who has been supporting this policy the whole time, and County Attorney 5E and their office, and all you commissioners. We have time for questions. I don't know if we have time. I don't know why I added that part. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. We'll make time. We'll talk all night if we have to. Thank you, Mr. Ouellette. Do any commissioners have questions? Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ouellette, for being here, and the presentation looks good. I just have, part of it, you're talking about historic preservation. And that's a big part of Uptown Butte. That's within your ordinance. It says, if the property is located in designated historic district or a property that qualifies, can qualify historic registration, has received URA funding, the applicant must demonstrate that a historical preservation consultation has been completed. By whom?
Kate McCourt, so it would be the Historic Preservation Office. If you would like me, I could be more clear about that, but it would definitely not be by me, but that sounds, I think that's
Just
great.
a thought.
Yeah,
You know, I'm
no,
just-
absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorich. Anybody else? Commissioner Callahan.
Thank you, Chairwoman Shea. Yeah, Mr. Olet, I just got a question for you. In part of that, you made the comment that the property is public property, and I believe the property is the property of the property owner with public access. The sidewalk isn't public property. It's the property owner's property.
Mr. Elect.
Sorry, thank you, Commissioner Shea. Commissioner Callahan, I would yield to County Attorney's Office, or County Attorney 5E. From how we were operating under this, if I do have Zane, if you would like to address this issue, or Commissioner Mark Neary.
Welcome, Mr. Gleason. Please introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Zane Gleason, Public Works Project Manager and Compliance Specialist. The sidewalks are the property owners, but it's still our public right-of-way. So all the maintenance falls under them to do, but we have all the enforcement on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Commissioner.
Follow up, Mr. Callahan? You're good? Okay. Commissioner Thatcher.
And thank you, Chairwoman Shea. No questions, James. Excellent work. I can tell you're passionate about it. I appreciate you getting everybody involved. I mean, it was a very arduous process the last time. So I am touched by the work you've done, and it's taken a bit to get here. I definitely agree with that. So I just want to say I'm very proud of you, and I appreciate what you are doing for our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Thatcher. I would echo that. Thank you, James. Okay, if there are no other comments from commissioners, I will open the public hearing. First call for proponents. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi. Cassie Wick, 820 West Mercury. So, Madam Chair, members of the council, I am here tonight to respectfully ask for your support in voting yes for ordinance number 2024-06. Over the past year, Butte has made significant strides toward becoming a more accessible community. Ability Montana extends a heartfelt thank you to Jamie Decker, James Olet, our friends living with disabilities who have shared their personal experiences, the council, and the many Butte-Silver staff members who have been instrumental in bringing us to this point. With the approval of the ADA transition plan and steps like this ordinance, tonight, Butte is emerging as a leader in accessibility within Montana, and that is something we all should be proud of. The historic buildings in Uptown Butte were constructed well over a century before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. Knowing that accessibility wasn't a consideration during that time, it's our responsibility today to make it as feasible as possible for businesses to meet their obligations under the ADA. By establishing a clear process that evaluates solutions with the least impact on the public right-of-way and provides businesses with a straightforward path, we can help reduce frustrations, save time, money, and ultimately create a more accessible community. This is a benefit to everyone. I look forward to the day when accessibility is no longer a question for businesses in Uptown Butte, and when our friends and neighbors who need access can go wherever their people, their shops, or their activities are. So thank you for your time and your consideration. Please vote yes for ordinance number 2024-06.
Thank you, Ms. Wick.
She's a registered voter now since the last time she visited you.
Very nice.
I'm back. I won't yell at you this time.
Cassie, I think the mic turned. Go ahead and touch the bottom of the mic there.
Hello? Hello?
And please give us your name and address for the record.
Lucy Galeris, 15 Sawmill Gulch, Butte, Montana. This ordinance means that I can get around town and hang out with my friends without parents being required, which is nice because, you know, when you're 18, you don't want your parents following you around. If I can get into a building on my own, all they have to do is drop me off. If there's no ramps, then Dad's required, and he has to work and live his life too. So this ordinance means that I can get around town a whole lot easier and go where I want to go. If there were curb cuts, that would be even better, but ramps are a good start. It'll save Mom and Dad's back and my back. So that's a good thing to have, because I don't want to fall apart any more than I am, and I don't need them falling apart. So this ramp ordinance means a lot to me and means I can actually participate in my community. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galeris. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Chair and members of the council, my name is Barbara Kanapke. I live at 108 South Montana. I was here in April asking for a ramp permit to be accepted. It was, and I thank everyone involved for that victory for the ADA. That was the first baby step. We are now at the next phase. I support the proposed policy as a solid foundation for an expanded process of future means to better access. No one policy will be able to encompass all disabilities perfectly. I don't think anyone is asking for every non-compliant building to be torn down and rebuilt so it can be compliant. This policy is a compilation of many agencies' ideas and hopes for a solid foundation. I am excited about this, setting the ground for clearer paths to a more inclusive community. I have friends with mobility issues, and it is disappointing to me to not be able to spend time with them in these places where access is a problem. I look forward to what Butte can become for everyone. I am here tonight in support of Ordinance 2024-06.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Please give us your name and address, please.
My name is Michelle Lewis. My address is 3400 Hill Avenue, number 101 in Butte. And I'm nervous, and when I get nervous, my cerebral palsy gets a little stiffer and my walk is a little stranger, but hey, I've lived with it for 56, almost 57 years, so good to know. So good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. I reside in District 6, so Jim Fisher, you are my representative. And as you know, a large group of advocates, healthcare professionals, and community members provided moving testimony this past April in support of Top Deck's request for a ramp. I appreciate so much that we were heard. Thank you. Because in my testimony, I said that not having these accommodations meant that I don't matter and you can't see me. So today I say thank you because I have been seen and I've been heard. And now I'm asking that we go a step further to consistently enact the tenets of the Americans with Disabilities Act, that federal law that's been upheld by the Supreme Court and passed over 30 years ago. So let's stand on the right side of history and adopt and enact this policy and procedures to address accessibility for all now. Adopting this ordinance honors and respects those of us who need access in our community. This includes your neighbors, your family, your friends, and most likely one day yourself. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Kendra Brown, and I reside at 715 West Park Street. I'm here to echo the voices that you've heard and maybe be able to shed some light on some folks that weren't able to come tonight. I think this ordinance comes at an interesting time at what's happening both nationally and on the state level in Montana right now. Montana's in the process, the very early stages of reviewing our Olmstead plan. The Olmstead Act came out of a Supreme Court decision in 1999 that said that people with disabilities have the right to choose where they get to live, and that choice includes living in the community and not in institutions. And so that came 9 years after the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it layers on top of the ADA to say that not only can we not discriminate, but we also need to make sure that we're providing choice in an integrated and inclusive and accessible community. And so Montana is looking at, are we doing that well, and where can we grow? And so this week, actually, part of this, the beginning of this plan is to do focus groups with people with disabilities across Montana to see how things are working, how they've been able to live in the community, and then also to see why some folks haven't been able to leave nursing homes and institutions. So this week we had a focus group here in Butte to hear what the folks here have to say about what it's like living in this community and if they feel like they have choice and if it's accessible and inclusive. And so there was a lot of really great conversation that came out of that, but one of the most unanimous thoughts that came out of the group was that everyone feels very welcomed in this community by the people of this community. And I think everyone, everyone always says Butte has the best people. But they all kind of segmented that but the environment here makes it really hard to feel included in every event and activity, especially when it's in Uptown Butte and especially in the winter. And so the idea that you guys have already been paving the way, like we said, with both allowing the ramp at Top Deck and then passing the transition plan, like we're already ahead of where the state is and where other states are just now coming back to revisit these laws and seeing where we're at. And I just want to say, thank you for, we're so grateful that you guys have taken that lead. And also to say that when we were here the first time before we came, we were working with the state partners at Disability Rights Montana to prepare for the last commission meeting we came to. And one of the folks that works there, he said this quote that stuck in my mind, that the first person that breaks through a wall will often come out bloody and bruised. And so Jamie was the first one that was breaking through this wall of asking for a ramp on the public right-of-way. And now that she broke through, the path will be easier for those coming after her. And tonight, I feel like we have the opportunity to just break the wall down and just make a clear path forward for the rest of the business owners that want to follow. And we said too the last time, we hope that lots of people start asking for ramps, because that means that we have lots of businesses coming to Butte and that we're continuing to grow and we're continuing to make this community inclusive and accessible. So I urge you to please vote yes on ordinance 2024-06. I didn't write it down.
06, yeah. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm also back. My name is Jamie. I'm Jamie Decker. I reside at 671 South Washington Street here in Butte. Madam Chair, Council Commissioners, Chief Executive Gallagher. I know that nobody's shocked to see me here tonight, and I just want to say this, that I think we're here to make history again, I hope. I own 160 West Granite Street, just across the street from here. I'm sure that everybody took a double take in the last few weeks. As that houses Top Deck Medical Aesthetics and Wellness, and after more than a year, a brand new ADA access ramp. I have come here tonight to thank each and every one of you who made that possible for us. Without the council's decision in April to support the accessible health care here in Butte, that would not have been possible. As Kendra just said, she took the words out of my mouth. I was told more than once during the process of obtaining the ramp at the clinic that the first person through the wall makes the biggest hole. I'm fairly small, but I'm pretty sure I made a huge hole. I've got the scars and the debt to prove that that statement is true. When we first started to ask about the ramp in 2023, unfortunately, we were told, and I quote, "The policy is just to say no." Tonight, James Ouellette, who is the ADA coordinator, is bringing forth the communication 2024-484 to the county regarding easements for ADA ramps in the public right-of-way. I want to extend a thank you to everyone who worked on the verbiage for this after the April meeting, including James Ouellette, everybody from Ability Montana, specifically Cassie and Kendra, Chief Executive Gallagher, for the support. I would ask that you find it in your hearts again tonight to say yes to this, not only to ramps in the public right-of-way, but to policy change that will make Uptown Butte more accessible for all individuals in our community. As we've heard more than once, good access is good business. For the last 2 days, I've actually been sitting at the Montana Council for Disability Conference here at the Copper King here in Butte. As a provider of healthcare here in town, I wanted to learn how to more effectively care for the disabled in our community. What I didn't expect to hear were the horror stories of intolerance and injustice that is happening all across the state to people suffering from disabilities. I urge you to bring Butte up to speed with this policy change and give businesses and building owners alike the opportunity to serve everyone in the community, not just the able-bodied. Access will become more important and pressing as Butte continues to grow and expand. While I understand that much of the work of this ramp required on my part is the cost of doing business, I would hope that all of us learned that there is a way to always find a yes solution, and that we're all better when we come together. Lastly, as someone who served first as a nurse and now as a nurse practitioner for the last 15 years, I want to leave you with this. Disability and even limited mobility is coming for everyone in this room in some capacity as we age, and I think every fire person in here can agree with that. Whether that's a walker or a cane or simply a broken foot, God forbid a serious accident or illness, please make the policy change and vote yes. And in the words of my friend Lucy Galaris, give them the damn ramp.
Thank you. I'll do a second call for proponents. Hi, Reddy.
Howdy. Reddy Frost, 2000 Roberts Avenue, Butte, Montana. I'm also here to speak in favor of, 2024-06? Yeah. I mean, you know, the U.S. has an aging population. All of the tradesmen I know are already showing signs of terrible knee injuries and stuff. I mean, myself included. This is just a smart call all around, especially for our current citizens with disabilities. You know, we want tourism. This is the best town in Montana. Let's be real. And let's make it accessible to as many people as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Regina Galeris, and I live at 15 Sawmill Gulch in Butte. And I would just ask that you guys continue to approve this. It's making wonderful change in Butte, and I will be able to hopefully watch my daughter grow in this community and have access in this community and to be able to grow where her family is. So, and for all of my friends and all of the hard work that Cassie, Kendra, James, and so many people have done to put this forward, we really thank you, and we thank all of you for your support, for your listening to us, and for including them in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Third call for proponents. All right, I'll make a first call for opponents. Second call for opponents? Third and final call for opponents. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I just want to remind everybody that this ordinance is currently in the Judiciary Committee. We won't be voting on it tonight. All of this, it was pending the public hearing, so all of this public comment will be taken to heart by the members of the committee who are on the council as they discuss this in 3 weeks. We don't have a meeting next week, so it will be the second week of November, and it will be discussed at Judiciary and be moved forward from there if they so choose, which I can't imagine them not, but just wanted to educate a little bit about the process. Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on to presentations. Communication number 2024-486. Lori Baker Patrick, Butte-Silver Bow Treasurer, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence for time on Wednesday, October 23, 2024, Committee of the Whole, for a presentation of the new Butte-Silver Bow property tax bill. Welcome. Ms.
Good
Baker
evening,
Patrick.
everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Lori Baker Patrick, Butte-Silver Bow County Treasurer, and this is tough to follow. But I will make this pretty brief. We do have a new property tax bill coming out for the real estate and centrally assessed, which are at the printers and will be mailed by October 31st. I know everybody is so excited about that. Anyway, I'm just going to talk briefly about why we're changing the tax bill, the benefits of the new tax bill, and the tax bill comparison and the cost effectiveness. First of all, why are we changing the tax bill? Well, since I became treasurer in 2016 as interim and then elected in 2017, in 2017 legislation, House Bill 18 passed, and that revised the notification requirements when an attachment of a tax lien has happened. Legislation wanted more transparency on the tax bill, and they wanted to notify the taxpayer that they had a tax lien attached on their property. I will show you that in a different slide. Also in 2021 legislation, Senate Bill 212 revised property tax laws and wanted tax bills itemized, and they wanted the mill levies indicated as voted levies. And you've seen that ever since our billing in 2021. In 2023 legislation, House Bill 497, the legislation wanted more transparency and a comparison for a 2-year comparison on property taxes. Well, that would have cost additional taxpayers' dollars. So the treasurers, of course, voted against that. So we came to a compromise that we would have that available for the public. So in Butte-Silver Bow, you can find that on our iTax website if you pay your property taxes online, or you can just go visualize your taxes on our website. We also have it available in our office, so you can call, we can mail it, we can email it, we can do whatever you want. We can talk to you about it on the phone, or you can come in the office and see my staff. Also, with all the voted bond issues that happen all the time, voted school levies and other districts that have been happening in Butte-Silver Bow, our tax bill is running out of room. It has ran out of room. So a year ago, when we were balancing our tax bills, we noticed when we were going through the test bills that more than 50% of those test bills had a notice on there that there was more to the tax bill, and you could find that information in the treasurer's office. What that means is there are so many line items on the tax bill, it's pushing some of what you're paying off, and that meant you had to call the treasurer's office to find out what was on the tax bill that you couldn't calculate with what you saw on the tax bill. And I will show you that in this slide here. So the pink box that's there, that's the notice that there's a tax lien attached to your property on the current tax bill. And then the notice above it is the additional information breakdown that you can get in the treasurer's office. And so on this particular tax bill, the three different line items that are missing from that tax bill is their lighting, their fire hydrant, and their stormwater flat rate. So this is not that much, but if you're in a district, say it has a TIF district and another district, and a whole lot going on in that district, Harrison Avenue is one of the biggest ones, you may have a few more than just three. This is what you would see if you pulled up our iTax website on your property tax bill, and the arrows pointing to the category where it would give you the 2-year tax comparison. So you can get that in your own home, or again, you can contact my office for the tax comparison. This is what it would look like if we printed it out for you. You can come in, we can go over it with you, whatever you need. We can get it to you however you want. So the benefits of the new tax bill is it's going to have an at-a-glance pie chart that will show you, and it's color coordinated, so it'll show you where your monies are going. It's going to be even more transparent because we've added two new buckets to the tax bill, one for tax increment and one for other districts. Those two buckets, if you looked at our tax bill, would look like they were going to the city and county of Butte-Silver, the local government. Now they're broken up into their own category. Again, additional space on the new tax bill for additional things that are coming for future, and cost effectiveness to print and mail. So this is a distribution summary that will show on the back of the new tax bill that's going to be mailed to you. And as you can see on there, we have the county levies, the percentage that you would pay if this was your tax bill, and how much you're going to pay for that. The next one is the state levies. Those are the equalization mills. The next is the school districts. So if this particular bill is in school district 1, so that's the percentage that they're paying in that district for their schools and the amount that they're paying. Your user fees are fees that Butte-Silver, the local government, doesn't charge you for monthly or bi-monthly or whatever, it's on your tax bill. So those are like your metro sewer, your fire hydrant, your lighting. Those are your user fees. The tax increment, if you're in a tax increment district, that will show where those monies are going. And then other districts, which you're wanting to know what other districts are. That's going to be like the airport, the port authority, the search and rescue, and Mile High Soils. So those monies are going to those districts and not to the local government general fund. And then this is the tax increment bucket, so it'll show you the portion that's going into your tax increment. This is the front and the back of the new tax bill that will be coming to you. We are in a weird spot with this because if you pull up iTax and you go to your tax bill, it's going to show you the old one just for this particular billing cycle. But when you get your bill in the mail, it's going to be this one. The reason for that is because of it's programming with our software company, so we'll see the full Monty next billing, but we wanted to get the new bill out there to everybody. The other reason is with this new tax bill and the vendor that is going to be mailing this out, we're going to be able to trace this tax bill from when it leaves the arrival post office all the way to the destination post office. We had talking about getting complacent and needing to revise things and paying attention. What happened to us last year is at least 2,000 tax bills did not make it to the taxpayer. They were taxpayers that had zip codes outside of 59701, 59702, and 59703. I have a record that they went to the post office with the signature from the person that took those bills and the amount that was in those, but it's a handwritten form that I received. We have no idea where they went. We've never gotten them back in the treasurer's office. The taxpayers have never gotten them. This IBM trace with the new tax bill will allow us to see that. So if somebody said they didn't get their tax bill, I can go right to the post office that's in their area of where that postal person is picking that up to deliver it to their home. So that is a huge plus. And with that, we're still saving costs. And then this is the old tax bill, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. So there's the IMB trace information. And anybody can give us a call or come in and see us if they have any questions regarding the new tax bill and what's going on in the treasurer's office. So just to recap, there's going to be more real estate or room on the tax bill for upcoming legislation and new levies that might pass. Even more transparency with the two new buckets and the kinds of taxes, the other districts and the tax increment. It's going to be cost effective to print and mail. The updates that we made is it's going to have the new Butte-Silver logo, so it won't have our old information on there. We've also changed the taxpayer number to assessment number, and we've added the GO code, which caused a problem when we were getting our tax rebates this year to pay our property taxes. There was never a reason to have our GO code on our tax bill. But the Department of Revenue uses that number, and we didn't have it on our tax bill the last 2 years. So we're going to fall in suit with the Department of Revenue in case anything like this ever happens. Again, it's going to be less confusion for the taxpayer. And then IBM trace. So I'll be able to let the customer know your tax bill made it to this destination. So you might want to talk to your carrier. And I know the one thing the commissioners always want to see is so in fiscal year 2023, you can see the real estate and centrally assessed print and mail, what it cost us to do that. The mobile home and personal business, personal property, printing and mail, and what it cost us to do that. In fiscal year 2024, which was this time last year, that was the cost to print and mail our real estate and centrally assessed tax bills. And then we went to the new vendor with the mobile home and personal business, personal property tax bills, and you can see the difference in the cost with that. The estimated cost to print and mail our real estate tax bills this year, I haven't gotten the final estimate on it, or the final bill on it, is the one under fiscal year 25. So we're already saving money. The only difference is it's not going to have that heavy paper, so we're not paying for that heavy paper. It will come in a number 10 envelope like this instead of a trifold. So we're saving cost on mailing. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. This is exciting news. I love that everything's going to be listed, and I love to be able to see it, and I enjoy the visual. That's going to be very helpful. Is there any questions, comments from the commissioners? Thank you.
You know where to find me.
We know where to find you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 2 under presentations, communication number 2024-508. Jerry Brothers, Butte, Montana, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to address the council on Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024, regarding questions about the Fire Advisory Committee. Mr. Brothers, please come to the microphone. Welcome.
Jerry Brothers, 2315 Center Drive, Butte. Thank you very much, Chairman Shea, Council Commissioners. Thank you for letting me put a little dig in here for trying to get something going that I thought was working quite well. The Fire Advisory Committee was the main conduit between paid volunteers and commission. With the 3 members of you, anytime you had any question on anything that was going on in the fire district or in the departments, there was 3 guys here that could people, that could fill you right in. The paid and the volunteers had a voice at the table. I thought it went quite well. There was some personalities on it, but I think things are working out pretty well. There's some things that I cannot talk about tonight, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Mr. Brothers. So my question is, you and we've talked outside of here, and so yes. My understanding is the ask that you have tonight, or that you're trying to make aware to the council, is to reestablish the Fire Advisory Committee and begin meeting on a monthly basis again. My understanding is that hasn't been happening. And I did speak with the chief executive last week. It looks like he would like to say a few words. So unless you have something else to add, I would ask the chief executive to go ahead and give us an update.
Go right ahead. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Just there was a little bit of, I guess, I'll call the mistake on me a little bit here. We met and talked about adding or revamping the Fire Advisory Committee. There was agreement between everybody that we were going to bring on 3 new commissioners, 3 new paid fire, and then ask the volunteers to bring 3 new volunteers on. At that meeting, it was agreed upon that generally in the summer, the Fire Advisory took a hiatus. I was working with then Chairman Frederickson to bring me 3 new commissioners forward. The paid was going to bring us 3 new, and then we were going to work with the volunteers. I will take the hit on this, as Chairman Frederickson took a position in Butte-Silver. He was no longer the chairperson. That request didn't get forwarded to Commissioner Shea, so we missed the boat on this. But it's not the intent at all not to have the Fire Advisory. It is in charter. Our intent is to have that in place. I've been communicating with Commissioner Shea about that, and I've been communicating with Director of Fire Services Osborne about the need to reestablish that as well. And you and I had communication last week when we talked about that as well. It's the choice of the volunteers who they pick on that. So, and then it comes to me, and then I make the recommendation to the council, and then the council will approve that or not approve it at the time. But that's generally the case, that each group gets to bring their 3 members. And so there's no intent not to have the Fire Advisory. I agree with you. It's needed. It's there in charter for a purpose, and so we're going to continue on with that as we move forward, and I'll be working with Commissioner Shea on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Mr. Brothers, did you have something to add? There you go.
Yes, thank you very much, Chief Executive. Our last meeting was the first Tuesday of February last year, so there were several months that should have been meetings. I was unaware that of the meeting that you had. I thought that was just with the commissioners and that. If we were given, this is what we want to do, we definitely would have followed it way sooner. I do really appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen, and I really do feel it's a very important board. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Brothers. I have some commissioners who have expressed interest in being on the Fire Advisory Committee, and I will forward that information to the Chief Executive. I think everybody here is committed to getting it reestablished and get working together again, and make sure that lines of communication are preserved and maybe reconnected a little bit. So I would ask commissioners, Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chairwoman Shea. So I guess, could somebody give me a timeline on what we're thinking on that? Obviously, I know things don't move that quickly in government, but I see, looking at Mr. Brothers' letter to us, that there are several concerns that he has. Are we waiting to address those, or what's our goal there?
I would defer to Mr. Brothers on that.
Yes, yes, each one of them should. These are major things that are happening in the fire community. We wanted to find out what was going on with the fire study. We paid between $50,000 and $60,000 for it. I understand there's some problems. When it originally came back, it went into the paid department, and they made some corrections that we have no idea what was done. They were given it to make any corrections in it. Then about 3 weeks later, it came out to the fire council, and we don't know what's going on with that. Very, very important, I think, to get that out. The second was the ISO study. The ISO study is, the ISO is who sets the insurance rates for us as homeowners. The volunteers were always a major player in this, because on the where we don't have hydrants, we're the ones that have the water tenders. We have trucks that just haul just water. That's what they're for. The third one, the new phone system, we were under the understanding at the fire advisory before that we were going to get something such as I Am Responding or e-dispatch. That would go right into the dispatch station, and when a fire call came, that would go straight out to all the volunteers' phones. We have a similar one going on right now that is in Boulevard Fire Station, but it is very finicky. I would guess about 30% of the time we do not get notification, and sometimes it's an hour later that we get notification. I don't feel that we had much input into the CAD system. I personally have tried to go to dispatch, and I'm not allowed in there unless I go with the paid fire chief. Our rural response plan was totally rewritten without our input. When there is a fire, for instance, out out by Feely, we want to get those tenders on the road right now. Because if we wait for the 15 to 30 minutes for somebody to get there and say, oh boy, we need water, that's how far out we are. Volunteers have to come from their homes to the station and then to the fire. Before, when we wrote the rural response plan, we took that into consideration. I really believe that a lot of the volunteer firemen are not being treated as citizens of Butte-Silver Bowl. The reason we're there is because we care. It does not cost you guys anything in labor for us. What the county pays for is maintenance on our trucks, maintenance and lights and water for our stations. I feel that there's no way that the volunteers could handle Butte. I feel there's no way with the current paid station they can handle all of Butte-Silver Bowl. We have to work together, and this was one place where we could get together and actually have good discussions.
Follow-up, Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess you guys can tell me if I'm being out of line, but could these not just be addressed tonight? Is that something that we can't do? I'm just asking a question. I mean, Director Osborne's here, Mr. Brothers is here. Is this something we cannot do tonight, or genuine question?
Chief Executive Gallagher.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Commissioner Thatcher. Some of this, I don't think we can fully address on all of this. When we're talking about the study, there, as was recorded in the paper today, and with the study, the group that did it felt that there was so much contention within the fire departments and hostility that they felt they were asking not to come and present in Butte. When I found that out, I said that if they're not going to complete their scope of work, we're not going to take a reduction in costs. We were going to ask for all of our money back on that. And so I've been working with County Attorney Fyvie on that. She's been in communication with the group that did the study, and they are coming to present. They have not set a date yet, so I can't say when that is going to happen, but County Attorney Fyvie has been working with that group. Other issues on here, I think that part of this need to be addressed, and if you would like, Director of Fire Services to come up, and to speak to this a little, I think that could be appropriate as well.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Thatcher?
Oh, perfect. That's all I was going to ask. Is then will you call
I
him?
would
Thank
ask
you.
the Director of Fire Services to come forward and maybe provide us with your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, Zach Osborne, Director of Fire Services. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council tonight. I also want to extend my gratitude to the members of the public, all the firemen and representatives of the media who are here to listen. This is an important moment for transparency and accountability. And forgive me in advance, I have a lot of information that I would like to share with you guys. So Mr. Brothers stated in the Montana Standard and his letter to Commissioner Shea, the fire advisory meetings have been canceled with no explanation as to why. The meetings have been put on hold for multiple reasons. One, our last meeting was held on February 6th. And like Chief Executive said, historically, because of lack of attendance, we postponed those summer months. Another reason why the meetings were postponed is because the volunteers did get a lawyer. On March 15th, I received a letter from their attorney, and so we basically halted communication. Their lawyer and our county attorney have been in contact. So since they have lawyered up, the question of having meetings take place between the career and volunteer firemen were always asked in question of what we should be doing. Any communication should then be between the volunteer's lawyer and the county attorney. Keep in mind, this isn't the first time the volunteers have sought a lawyer. In 2006, something very similar took place after Fire Chief Jeff Miller proposed a consolidation plan in 2005. And then to say there was no explanation why the meetings were postponed, there is a letter sent by Local 96 President John Leibel to the 3 volunteer fire advisory members. That letter was sent on March 1st, explaining why the postponing of the meetings. So if you don't mind, I'll just run through the history of events for the past 9 months. February 6th, our last meeting. February 16th, received a letter of complaint from a Butte career firefighter of an ethics incident that he had with one of the council commissioners, council members, who sit on the advisory board. I read the letter and then sent it to Chief Executive. On February 20th, I received an email from Chief Executive explaining that the Chief Executive was going to meet with Council Chair Frederickson. March 14th, I received a letter from the firefighter union, Local 96, in support of that affected firefighter versus the council member. The letter was meant to be taken to the floor. However, the chief executive and I had talked on the phone and discussed that a meeting should take place first. On March 5th, a meeting was set. March 7th, the meeting took place about the ethics issue. In attendance was Chief Executive Gallagher, Council Chair Frederickson, Commissioner Sorich, Commissioner Callahan, the affected firefighter, members of the Local 96, and myself. During the meeting, we discussed the ethics complaint and the events that took place. The meeting went back and forth with not much movement on either side, and it was at that time that a decision was made to take a break from fire advisory and form 9 new committee members. In May, as you guys know, Chair Frederickson took a new position, forcing him to step away from being a commissioner, which even added to the more of postponing from the fire advisory meetings. Now you all have a better understanding as to why the delay. If you have any further questions on fire advisory, the letters of ethics, I would be to share those at a later date. Mr. Brothers also stated to Commissioner Shea, the charter states the committee will meet monthly, composed of the 3 members and 3 members and 3 members. So I'd like to correct him on that. The charter does not state that they have to meet monthly. It just states that there has to be one composed of 9 positions. Mr. Brothers stated in his letter to Commissioner Shea, and it was also in the standard, that what is happening with the fire department study that used $60,000 from ARPA and was supposed to be delivered last January. I know the study is a big question, so I'd like to run you through some events that took place there. July of 2023, I'll just run you back, government agreed to a fire study using ARPA funds that totaled $52,000 and some change. After some meetings in August 7th through the 9th, ESCI sent 3 individuals, 1 retired fire chief from Kansas, 1 battalion chief from Baltimore, and 1 assistant chief from the Helena Fire Department here in Montana. During their 3-day visit, ESCI individuals conducted many stakeholder meetings, interviews. They interviewed me, chief executive, finance, HR, buildings, county attorney, the mechanics at the shop, battalion chiefs, our fire marshal, the union, and each volunteer department, as well as the commissioners. In September, I had a Zoom meeting with ESCI, and it was then that I was told about an incident that happened during one of the stakeholder meetings. Heated arguments were exchanged between a council member and ESCI. This is very unfortunate, as council members are some of BSB's highest form of government and leadership. February 11th, an 80% draft was sent to me, chief executive, and each volunteer department for review. On March 8th, I received an email from ESCI explaining feedback they received from the volunteers and that the volunteers were going to get their lawyer involved. ESCI explained that they have never had to seek their own legal advice. Now they were forced to do so. In turn, was going to stall the process. June 23rd, I received a final draft, and on July 10th, I requested that ESCI send the final draft to the chief executive and each volunteer department. Now this was a rough draft of the final draft. The final draft is supposed to be presented during the presentation, so we could still make small adjustments if we needed. July 11th, I received an email from ESCI explaining that Centerville was seeking an attorney and to be expecting a phone call. July 11th, The final draft before publication was sent to the volunteers, giving them one last chance to comment on any mistakes. July 11th again received another email from ESCI with the language that they were not going to return to Butte to give the final presentation because and if they didn't give the final presentation, they were going to give us a discount on the $52,000. The reasons for not wanting to give the presentation and to break their contract was, like the chief executive said, the political tensions in our community were too high. On July 31st, I received an email from ESCI. They received an email from the volunteers, a statement of displeasure from the fire study. This only reassured their decision not to come present their final draft. August 14th, County Attorney Fyvie emailed ESCI explaining the need to follow the contract and provide a presentation. August 15th, the CFO of ESCI explained that the reason for not presenting was a few stakeholder meetings that were not at all welcoming. Individuals even made comments regarding their team returning to our community. The CFO stated that it was likely one of the strangest site visits that they have ever done. And please keep in mind, ESCI is a reputable company with thousands of studies to have been completed, and the business has been open for over 48 years. August 15th, County Attorney Fyvie had a phone meeting with the CFO, and ESCI agreed to follow through with the presentation at an unknown future date, hopefully sometime in December. So thank you, County Attorney Fyvie. Now you all have a better understanding as to why the delay in the study. If you have any further questions on the study, I'd be happy to visit with you at a later date. Mr. Brothers also stated in his letter to Commissioner Shea, the ISO study that regulates our insurance rates hasn't come out. For everybody that doesn't know, fire departments get evaluated for ISO once every 5 years. Last year was our year. After evaluation, an ISO score is given to the city. Only some insurance companies still use ISO scores. Many insurance companies, like State Farm, use their own metric system. An ISO score is only one factor that insurance companies consider when calculating premiums. Butte-Silver has had a 410 score for many, many years. We have two numbers in our score because we are a city county and protect city and rural. The number 4 covers anything protected with fire departments and fire hydrants. The number 10 refers to anything in a rural setting. No fire stations, no hydrants is a automatic 10. Doesn't matter how much water you are sending, it is an automatic 10. Our 410 score is always posted on our county website for anybody to find. Mr. Brothers asked in his letter to Commissioner Shea, we heard that $792,000 was a grant that we put in for air packs. Is there any word on this yet? Mr. Brothers, you are correct. I did apply for a grant for SCBA's for the entire county. This grant was ultimately a long shot, and unfortunately, I did get notified about 2 weeks ago that we were not successful, and I will try again next year. Mr. Brothers stated in his letter to Commissioner Shea, Chief Osborne decided that we didn't need a new phone system that works through the 911 center to stand as a method of summoning volunteer firemen to scenes. 2 methods of activating volunteers are needed for volunteers because computers and pagers are not reliable 100% of the time. During a fire advisory meeting on May 3rd, 2022, we discussed a phone paging system for the volunteers. The volunteers were supposed to establish an internal volunteer IT committee and explore options for a phone paging system. There was a few career firefighters that even did some legwork and found companies that would be willing to come in and set up free trial periods. We talked about these systems at every single meeting, at fire advisory meeting, and Mr. Brothers explained that they were still working on it. So nothing has been done. During my years in this position, 3 years of TIFID spending during fire advisory meetings, 3 years of TIFID requests by the volunteers, and I did not receive one request about a phone paging system. $192,193 in those 3 years was spent on equipment that went towards the volunteer departments. A large percentage of that money was spent on communications in the form of radios and pagers. I would like to mention that I am unaware of any law that requires a city to supply firefighters with 2 forms of summoning firefighters. They have pagers. However, from the Butte-Silver Fire Fund, we do pay a monthly subscription to 2 extra phone apps in the form of I Am Responding and Safe Alert. These are cell phone apps that work together with the 911 paging system that many of the volunteer departments use. So yes, they do have 2 forms of communication, not to mention multiple firefighters bringing Butte-Silver purchased radios home instead of leaving them on their apparatus where they should be. Mr. Brothers also stated in his letter to Commissioner Shea and the Montana Standard that we haven't had any input into the CAD system. So just so everybody is aware, we have a Butte-Silver 911 committee in which we meet almost every month. During these meetings, we discuss everything that involves 911, which includes CAD. Many of the original 911 meetings, that's all we talked about was CAD when we were implementing the new CAD system. The committee is made up of Doug Conway, Ed Lester, Lisa Carey, Nick McGree from A1, myself, and a volunteer fire department member. In fact, Mr. Brothers was that volunteer member for many years up until about 4 months ago when he removed himself and was replaced by Walkerville Fire Chief Tom Bolton. Mr. Brothers also stated in his letter to Commissioner Shea and in the Montana Standard, our rural response plan was completely changed without our input. We have one response plan. We do not have a rural response plan. We do not have a city response plan. We have one response plan that covers the entire county. We have designed this response plan so that according to the call and the area, we know what pieces of apparatus are required to suit that emergency. In 2022, Butte-Silver spent a large amount of money on a new CAD system. During the new CAD system changeover, it was a great time to change or update the one county response plan that we have. With the help of the administration team at the career department, we changed it because it needed to be changed. The old one was just that, it was old and outdated. We asked for the volunteers' help and input. We asked for months in fire advisory for input and assistance getting district boundaries and maps. Fire advisory, January 3rd, 2023, minutes. Commissioner Sorich stated, asking the volunteers, we just need your boundaries. Career firefighter Melgy stated, we need a date set, we need your boundaries soon. Volunteer George Stone stated, can't you get it? Volunteer Jerry Brothers stated, the volunteers aren't going to do that. What is the director of fire services doing? Why don't he do this? He gets paid to do this stuff. In an email dated January 29th, 2023, Commissioner and Fire Advisory Chair John Sorich sent an email to all volunteer chiefs asking for input and assistance in providing information to the new response plan and the CAD system. Mr. Sorich did not receive a single email in return. So, Mr. Brothers is correct. I do get paid to do this. Our Butte-Silver Charter states the Director of Fire Services shall be responsible for the administration of the paid and volunteer fire departments. Response plans are administration. I was appointed to this position by the Chief Executive. He entrusted me that I have the critical responsibility to manage taxpayer dollars. It is not a responsibility that myself or any of us should take lightly. It requires us to be vigilant stewards of our public resources, ensuring that every decision we make and every dollar we allocate serves the best interest for our community. So if I am not updating something that needs to be updated, I feel like I am not doing my job for a taxpayer. Mr. Brother also stated, we can't get a copy of the new response maps from anyone in the courthouse because they were told to tell the volunteers they have to go through the Director of Fire Services. We believe these maps are a matter of public record. The new response plan that we are currently using has not been changed since March 2023. On March 22nd, 2023, each volunteer chief had a meeting in my office. During that meeting, each chief was given the new response plan maps, as well as the response plan information that the 911 dispatchers will use. All chiefs showed up at these meetings except Little Basin Creek. If anybody wants any maps of the current response plan, please ask and I will be happy to make more copies. I am hoping by the end of the year that an even newer fire response plan will be implemented into our CAD system. And when that happens, I will be happy to share all maps and all information with whoever is interested. Mr. Brothers stated in his letter to Commissioner Shea and in the Montana Standard, we believe volunteer firemen are being treated like they have no rights as citizens of Butte-Silver. As a very involved fireman, I can't even go to the 911 center to see how it's set up. I am unsure what rights I or Butte-Silver government is not giving the volunteers. Mr. Brothers and a number of the volunteers are very involved, and we thank you for that. But as far as going into the 911 center to see how it's set up, I am not in charge of the dispatchers or the 911 center. I cannot authorize going to the 911 center. A tour from Doug Conway could possibly be scheduled. Mr. Brothers stated in his letter to Commissioner Shea, the fire advisory was canceled because the career firemen on the fire advisory did not like one of the commissioners. He stated in the Montana Standard, mainly because he was more on our side. Like I mentioned prior, the fire advisory meetings were postponed because of an ethics issue as well as other incidents. That involved one of the commissioners that was on the fire advisory board. Whether the career firefighters like a commissioner is not up to you to say. It is up to them personally. But to make a comment in a public paper that a commissioner was on the volunteer's side who was supposed to be on either side, I'm glad Mr. Brothers said it, and it wasn't me or any fire advisory member, because it would be a shame if that was the case. Mr. Brothers also quoted in the Montana Standard that he has been a volunteer for 40 years and remembers going to fires and being called a scab. First of all, thank you for your 40 years of service. That is a long career. And I apologize that any career firemen were calling you a scab. However, I hope we are not painting a picture that it is still that way currently. This is not how it is anymore. Nobody is calling anybody scabs at any fires. The volunteers have held on to this vision of war for years. The career department does not have those 40-year veterans anymore. The career department has young, intelligent individuals who just want to serve the public the best way possible, put out the fire as safely and efficiently as possible, and move on to the next call. I apologize if this offends anybody, but having a fire advisory committee, although good because it shares information, is not going to fix our relationship problems. This is not the first time issues have arisen from fire advisory. Also, including everybody's input on response plans has not worked in the past. So what makes us think it would work now? In the fall of 2015, the 9 fire advisory members voted and approved on a new response plan. However, the response plan was shut down the next week when a meeting took place at the EOC, when then Fire Chief Miller got absolutely roasted by the volunteers for attempting to make changes. On January 19th, 2016, Commissioner John Sorich resigned from the fire advisory because of frustrations that he had felt. Commissioners and fire advisory members John Morgan and Dan Foley resigned the week prior for, I'm sure, similar reasons. Tensions were so high that the remaining members of the advisory board decided to take a break. It wasn't until November 7th, 2017, when fire advisory meetings started back up. Even after the break and new members were formed, I was told that the meetings were not healthy. And obviously, I don't know if they're healthy today. I don't know what the fix is for this. I would like to think there is one, but my hopes are unfortunately low. I'm looking forward to the presentation of the study, but the study will not fix these relationships. This career versus volunteer fight has been festering for 47 years, and unfortunately, a $52,000 study is not going to fix this. I'm really grateful that Mr. Brothers initiated this conversation tonight. It gave us all a chance to speak on some facts about our department. I do want to make it very clear, the Butte-Silver Fire Department is a great department. We unfortunately get a lot of real-life practice fighting fires here, where other cities do not. We take pride in being safe and efficient and serving our citizens the best way that we can, and our number one priority is that. For the future, I'm going to make sure that I do a better job communicating with the volunteers, whether we have fire advisory or not. However, communication goes both ways. Many of Mr. Brothers' complaints could have been handled with simple questions to me, possibly instead of bringing it to a council floor. I have never dodged phone calls, avoided face-to-face conversations, and have never not replied to emails. Many of these complaints could have been simple, a simple question to me. I can't read everybody's minds. I don't know what people would like to know without getting asked. Once asked, I am always happy to answer exactly what I know. Thank you for your time. Have a great night.
Thank you, Director Osborne. Do you have a follow-up? Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair Shea. No real follow-ups just yet. I think that there are some other commissioners that wish to discuss, but I appreciate Director Osborne and his transparency and communication tonight, so I'll let anybody else have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thatcher. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Shea. Thank you, Chief Osborne. Thank you, firefighter brothers. Brings great sadness to me seeing this happen. I've got family on the career department. I've got family been in the volunteer business for years. This has got to come to an end. It's time. I mean, it just shakes me right now to see this bullshit going on all these years. Fire advisory is a must. It's a must. We're not going to give up on fire advisory. I have the faith in Chief Executive Gallagher that this is going to take place, and we're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to respect one another. I have family on the paid department. I have large families on the volunteer departments. These personalities got to be set aside. We got to work for the betterment of this community. And now let's face it, there's more medical calls than firefighting, and the firefighting is a dangerous business, just like the police department. You cannot have these personalities getting involved when you have a man in a fire and the wall's going to cave in, or vice versa. This has happened. All I can say is it saddens me. And I don't want to hear from either one of you guys till you're ready to sit down and talk like gentlemen to one another. This back and forth through the newspaper and this stuff tonight saddens me to death. I don't want to hear it no more. I want the chief executive, I'm going to challenge you to this, to get in the middle of this and take charge. Take charge. You appointed him, and you got some control of the volunteer firemen. I would like to see you, Chief Executive Gallagher, take charge, bring these people together, unite. Chief Osborne, it is your job to be the leader. You know, and I have all the trust in the world you can do that. But it takes a person with a mediocre mentality to bring things together and sit down. Mr. Brothers, we've been friends for years and years. It's time for you to sit down and realize it's time to get this over with. It's time to bring things together. I mean, you look at older firefighters in the volunteer department. They've been there for years and years. I mean, everybody knows where I come from in the fire department. My dad was a fireman for years. And, you know, Jeff Miller, go back to Trethway's days. There was always problems, no doubt, but there's never problems like we're having today. And for anybody to say these problems have been going on for 47 years, that's not true. There have always been a little discontent, but there's never been problems like we're having today. And I'm telling you what, I hope these commissioners agree with me, and I hope they will. It's time to bring this together and bring an end to it, and get that fire advisory committee together and have them do what they're supposed to do. Not having a meeting since February is unacceptable. Not speaking to each other, unacceptable. You know, let's take some pride in our community, get the two of you together and sit down and let's make this work. And if there's a problem, let's get it ironed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. That was very powerful. Yeah, I can see that. I do know one thing in this room, no matter which side you're on, everybody wants the same thing. And I always say that whenever we have, even the commissioners disagree, in the end, we all want the same thing. And we have an obligation to reinstate the Fire Advisory Committee. And the chief executive has a vested interest, the paid, the volunteers, everybody has a vested interest in making that come together and see if they can overcome their differences and work together in a more productive way, which is ultimately to the benefit of the citizens, which is why we're all here. Everybody that's here is here to serve the citizens, not themselves, not each other. We're here to serve the citizens. So my conversation with the chief executive is that we are committed to staffing our pieces of the Fire Advisory Committee. As I've said, I've had commissioners express interest in this. I will be forwarding their names to the chief executive for appointment. I would encourage the volunteer, the paids, submit your names. Let's see if we can't. I know it sounds very cheesy, but at some point we have to draw a line in the sand and make a fresh start. And I think that's what Commissioner Fisher is kind of imploring us to do. So thank you, Chief Osborne. Thank you, Chief Brothers. Thank you to all the volunteer fire department, the paid firefighters who are here tonight. It's a very passionate issue, and I do appreciate everybody's engagement. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you guys for the coming and speaking on this tonight. I know there's been this big issue about the fire study, and truthfully, one of the best things that come out of the fire study right now is hearing the fact that these guys that aren't from here don't want to come back. But the best thing the best study we've had ever, in my opinion, for all this money we think we waste on studies was honestly this fire study. And the best thing that come out of it, which is also a negative positive, however you want to put it, is these three guys don't want to come back and represent it because of all the hostility. Like, that should, whatever side that coming from, I mean, that's a big deal. Like, one, embarrassing is our wonderful town that I fight over my whole life for, the best place you could live in America, right? But pretty goddamn embarrassing that these guys don't want to come back to do that because of the hostility there. To me, we don't even need to see the study right there. That says a lot. So it's time to figure it out, and appreciate you coming out here tonight, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. very disappointed on an awful lot of what I've heard. The thing is that you know, you're separated on different sides of the room. You know, so much of our country is fractured, and I hate to see that. There's a lot more that we all have in common than what we don't have in common. And I know that the paid department has a tough job, and that they're doing this because they're compensated, but I know that they take this job because they have the best interest of the community. I know that the volunteer side, you're not being compensated, but you're doing this because you have compassion and you have the best interest for your community. I know that the 12-member body up here, the chief executive, all the elected officials, we do this because we want to help our community. You do this because you want to help the community. You do this because you want to help the community. And if you don't, if that's not one of your underlining impacts while you're doing this job, then maybe you need to find a different job. The community should be the number one thing. And if that's not it, really think about something else. But the best thing that we can have is an open dialogue. And I really implore Mr. Osborne that you work. I know it's hard to communicate with somebody who's you're constantly in an adversarial fight with. So try to reach across the aisle and find one or two people who you can work with on the volunteer side. And Mr. Brothers and the other chiefs on the volunteer side, what I'd like you to do is find one or two people who you can work with and you have a good relationship on the paid side. I would like for you guys to choose the people you can work with on the other side instead of someone who's going to be a stalwart for your side. And I think that's the best thing we can do for the community to bring it forward. I'd like to see new people on the commission be on this fire advisory committee, somebody who hasn't necessarily been there before, so we can have a fresh start all the way around. And I think, Mr. Osborne, you're going to have a hard task monitoring and keeping everybody in line a little bit. I know that you're in charge and the boss of the paid department, but you also oversee the volunteers. And you're going to have to, it sounds like, really improve your working relationship with them. It's very disheartening to see this much animosity. I know that the volunteers have an awful lot of pride. I know they've done a fantastic job. I said a few things to a few of you in the past, mainly, you know, maybe it'd be a good idea to consolidate a few of these things. And man, did I hear an earful from that. But I think we're going to have to take some drastic hard looks and see what we can do to best serve our community. Because I firmly believe at the end of the day, the underlying factor that we all have in common is our love for Butte-Silver Bow and the people of Butte-Silver Bow. We have that as a starting point, and if we can put some of our differences aside, I think we can all work together. And I think that we really need to do that for the best interest of everybody in our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to be very brief. I resigned because of some issues that I'm not going to, that's in the past. I think we got to look forward. I think we got great people on both sides of the island here. Everybody's there for the same reason. Who I'm going to challenge tonight are the commissioners, because in 2021, when I was off the fire advisory, I got a phone call because we couldn't get a quorum from commissioners. They needed somebody up there. So it wasn't easy. It's not an easy committee to be on, but I'm going to challenge the commission. We got to do it. It needs to be done. So I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be gone in about 3 weeks, a month. I don't know, however long it takes. And I'm challenging you to step up and make a difference in this, because it is very important to try to bring these two groups back together.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorich, and thank you for your many years on that committee too. Any other commissioners? Okay. Mr. Brothers, I'll give you a brief moment.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to address your comment, Bill. The firemen, the volunteer firemen, and the paid firemen get along famously. We work together, everything goes just perfect. Our main deal is when we're talking about policies and things that have worked forever and we're being pushed aside. I'd love to talk to anybody personally about what's going on, but with the lawyers being involved right now, we've got to let that work out first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brothers. Okay, moving on to Section 2, Communications. Communication number 2024-474, Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for October 23rd, 2024 for the Molten Water Treatment Plant Filtration Replacement Project. If you were wondering why this wasn't on as a bid opening tonight, it's because it has been rescheduled. So Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair Shea. At this time, I would like to note and place on file communication number 2024-474.
Can I get a second? Second. Thank you. There's a motion and a second to note and place on file communication number 2024-474. Is there anything on the question? Will everybody please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Item number 2, communication number 2024-475, Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for October 23rd, 2024 for the DX cooling system for the detention center. This bid opening was also rescheduled. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair Shea. At this time, I'd like to note and place on file communication number 2024-475.
The motion and a second to note and place on file communication 2024-475. Is there anything on the question? Would everybody please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Item number 3, communication number 2024-484, James Olette, Butte-Silver ADA Coordinator, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a public hearing on October 23rd, 2024 for ordinance number 2024-06 regarding the ADA ramp encroachment permit for the purpose of receiving public comments regarding proposed amendments to the Butte-Silver Municipal Code. We held this public hearing tonight. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair Shea. At this time, I'd like to place on file communication number 2024-484.
There's a motion and a second to place communication 4-484 on file. Is there anything on the question? Will everybody please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay. 11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Item number 4, communication number 2024-486, Lori Baker Patrick, Butte-Silver Treasurer, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence for time on Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024, Committee of the Whole agenda for a presentation of the new Butte-Silver property tax bill. We held this presentation earlier. Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair Shea. At this time, I'd like to place on file communication number 2024-486.
Second.
So a motion and a second to place communication 2024 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everybody please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. 0 nay, motion passes. Item number 5, communication number 2024-495, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for November 13th, 2024 for the effluent reuse project for the Metro Sewer Division. We will hold this until November 13th. Item number 6, communication number 2024-496, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for November 6, 2024 for a compactor for the Butte-Silver landfill. We will hold this until November 6th. Item number 7, communication 2024-497, John Sullivan, Government Buildings Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to reschedule a bid opening for November 6, 2024 for the DX cooling system for the detention center. We will hold this until November 6th. Item number 8, communication number 2024-498, Mark Neary, Public Works Director, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to reschedule a bid opening for November 6th for the molten water treatment plant filtration replacement project. We will hold this until November 6th. Item number 9, communication number 2024-508, Jerry Brothers, Butte, Montana, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to address the Council on Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024, regarding questions about the Fire Advisory Committee. We heard that address earlier, so Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Madam Chair Shea. At this time, I'd like to place on file communication number 2024-508.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to place communication 2024-508 on file. Is there anything on the question? Will everybody please vote? Like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
11 yea, 0 nay. 0 nay.
11 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Now it's time for public comment on any public matter not on tonight's agenda. If there's a big burning question in your mind, you have a comment on something that's not on the agenda, please come to the microphone. Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion